Hello, everybody. Thanks for watching us live today. My name is Shavi. I am a product manager at LinkedIn. And today with me, I have Gyanda, who's our VP of product at LinkedIn. Gyanda, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone joining across the world.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for watching us live today. Please drop in the chat where you're watching us from and what you're hoping to learn from Gyanda. I already see a couple of very international folks. Emil watching us from Sweden, Benot from Montreal, and a lot more others. So please introduce yourself. So this is our first edition of the LinkedIn Learning's Product Management Learning Series, live streaming events where we interview industry thought leaders and product practitioners about their career journey as well as product best practice to inspire aspiring and current PMs like many of you to level up your product career. So make sure you subscribe to our newsletter to stay up to date with our latest programming as well as the recap of key takeaways from this event. Today with me, we have Gyanda, who's our VP of product. So Gyanda leads our product development for the LinkedIn marketing solution, which many of you probably are a little new to the business. So in the second half of our talk, we will dive into how Gyanda sets vision and strategy for the business. Prior to this, Gyanda also leads the product development for our consumer premium business. Many of you are probably very familiar with that part of the business and the commerce platform. Gyanda is also the co-founder of LinkedIn's Women in Product organization. So welcome, Gyanda. We're so honored to have you as our debut guest.
Thank you. I'm the warm-up act. I like
that. All right. And then let's see who else we have on the call. So someone dialing in, Bill from Southern California, guys, I'm from Toronto. So someone from Syria, oh man. All right, very exciting. Thank you so much for all of you dialing in at different time. So how about let's start, Gyanda, by understanding a little bit about your career journey. I believe you started as an engineer and then pivoted into products. So can you tell us a little bit about sort of your early career exploration and how you get into product?
Yeah, I'm happy to. And I like talking about this now because in retrospect, it taught me a lot of good lessons. But when I was going through this journey, it was very rough. So I had a rough start, and I will share, I guess, publicly with hundreds of people or what that looked like. So I graduated from grad school in 2007, which is when it's just the beginning of the housing crash. And at that point, I had an undergraduate degree in engineering from an Ivy League and a graduate degree from Stanford. And I thought I was a little bit unstoppable. I thought I would have companies lining up and I will have the choice of where I want to work. But the reality could not be further from that dream. There were very, very few companies hiring. I needed a visa to stay in the country. I'm sure many people here are international and on work visas or student visas, so you know what I am talking about. But at that point in time, very few companies were able to sponsor students. And I remember I maintained an Excel sheet of all the companies I had applied to, all the companies I had heard back from and interviewed at, and looking at that pipeline. That pipeline was not great. I think in a couple of months, which during the interview season, I interviewed at 40 different companies and I had one job offer. And I was the lucky one to have that job offer. And it was in investment banking. So I am internally grateful to that boutique investment bank that took a bet on me. But that's how I started my journey. And then I made the change to tech, and I came to LinkedIn in business operations. So even though my background is engineering, I've applied those skills across a number of different roles. And then from business operations to product was a whole other transformation and something I was very excited about. But we can go deeper into that if that's relevant for the audience. But I always it was a good lesson and good lesson in humility and resilience. So anyone out there who is trying to break through into a new industry, into a new country, into maybe trying to get into a school, just hang in there. You might be closer than you realize.
Absolutely. This is so inspiring. It's good to know that part of your story. I'm sure a lot of our audience, international cloud, can really relate to the visa situation in the US. So thanks for sharing that and being so candid with us. And yes, to building resilience. much needed in today's day. So we're often told to play to our strength when it comes to advancing our career. What do you consider are some of your superpowers, if you will, that have really helped you to accelerate your career in the past decade as you are navigating the world of product management?
Yeah, no, great question. And I don't know if these are superpowers, but um, I will share two things that I've relied on very heavily that have sort of stood the test of time. The first one is adaptability, and having an open mind. I think it's in a job like product management, especially, things change in real time, especially in the tech industry. And having an open mind to different perspectives, to different learnings, to different ways of framing the same exact thing has really been helpful for me. And there is this children's book. It's a strange analogy, but I will share it. There is this children's book called "They All Saw the Cat." It's a wonderful picture book, and it's basically this cat that, and on every page, a different animal looks at the cat, and you can imagine every page and every animal's perspective of the cat is different. The cat looks different on every page. The bat, the rat, the snake, the elephant, and you can imagine the elephant sees the cat as a small deal. The rat sees the cat as a very scary thing. The ant thinks the cat is just a ball of fur. All this to say that perspectives matter. And I think over time I realized keeping an open mindset to hearing different perspectives, being open to changing my own, and being adaptable in general, both in professional and personal life, has been really helpful. And then the second one is something I've learned from the executive team at LinkedIn over the last 12 years, which is um, to give everyone respect. It's something that is so obvious, and I think people just naturally assume that it happens, but it doesn't happen in every company. It doesn't happen in every industry. But if you give people respect, I think you build the kind of trust that usually takes years, sometimes decades to build. And when you respect their work, I think they aspire to do even better. So I think as I've grown into the leadership roles, I've noticed that it doesn't matter how junior or senior someone is. If you respect the work they do, if you give them that recognition, they do an even better job the next time. And I've done it myself. And someone respects my work, I do an even better job next time. So I think it's a really good way to keep everyone motivated. Generally, I think it's good for humanity.
Absolutely. I love visibility and recognition. It always helps, motivating people. And I think your points really resonate with some of our members as well. Garrison said, really inspiring story of courage and perseverance. Thanks for sharing it with us. And then also, perspectives matters. Keeping it open-minded is always very important. You used the example of a cat. I thought about the example of the blind the elephant in the room, and then there's 18 blind people touching different parts of the elephant, thinking that they were touching a different animal altogether, right? But in fact, they're painting a bigger picture together. So I we often celebrate success, in the workplace, and everybody look at your LinkedIn profile, probably see that, wow, Gyanda is so successful. You're a VP of product at a very reputable company. So throughout your career, have you ever felt, where you felt like you were an imposter, or maybe you failed? And what did you learn from those experiences? Like, what was the most challenging time that you had to overcome? Can you share that experience with the LinkedIn community as well?
Yeah. I mean, the LinkedIn profile will not tell that story. Anything on social media hardly tells the full story about anyone. But I will say that I think no matter who you speak to, they're working hard at something, because nobody's got it all figured out, and I certainly haven't. And in the time that I've changed industries and functions over the last 10 plus years, I have failed several times. In fact, if I were to generalize, I think every time I do something for the first time, I fail. And it's including like being an investment banking analyst for the first time. I'm pretty sure my first pitch deck was very poor. And then transitioning into business operations, making the first financial plan. And I remember one of my first few projects was capacity planning for a new that we were opening. And I'm pretty certain that I completely underestimated how much work there will be. In fact, I know this now because that team was much bigger at the start than I had predicted or suggested it should be. So I think every time you do something for the first time, you fail. And I think you should be prepared to fail. And I think one thing that I have since learned is that I used to have this mental model of I'm going to work so hard and prepare this wonderful like outcome, and then I will share it with the world, and it will be a big reveal, and people will be so proud, and it will have an impact. But I think a much better model is to share your iteration and your work at a regular cadence with whoever has more experience or is expecting to see the outcome. I think if you share your first draft, your second draft, and your final draft will be a lot better than if you just share the final draft in one get go. So I think I've learned from that, and many in product management, so many products that we launch, not all of them succeed. So I've seen firsthand. I've launched products that I had to take down the very next day because it was not well received at all. Or I've launched products that could not scale because we just did not invest in the infrastructure, and I did not see it coming. So I think there is, again, when you do something for the first time, be prepared to fail. And if you can, share your working draft and how you're thinking through things very early, so you can get that feedback and increase the chance of success ever so little.
Absolutely. I completely resonate with sharing working draft and not wait until the final big moment, the big review. I used to think of that way, but now I embrace more and more. Making progress is better than being perfect. So early draft definitely helps. All right. Next set of question. I think also some folks are asking if they can drop questions. So please do. We'll pick out from the audience if there's interesting question that we would like to hear from Gyanda. So if you have any question, please drop them in the chat. So let's switch gears a little bit into talking about the product and market trends, which is the main topic of today's chat. So you're leading our LinkedIn marketing solution, which encompasses like ads, pages, and service and product marketplace, which could be pretty new to most of the LinkedIn members here today, potentially. So can you tell us a little bit about what that business is about, and then what is your vision for that business? I think specifically for a lot of aspiring current PN, a lot of us are trying to learn how to craft a product vision and strategy. So if you could walk us through sort of your thought process to define a strategy, how you 10x a business, that would be really, really appreciated.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to share. And maybe like a little bit of what the business is. What do we do? So LinkedIn Marketing Solutions, as Shivi mentioned, is a combination of all our advertising products, which is how companies use the tools that they need to advertise on LinkedIn to get in front of the professionals who might find value in their products and services. And then also their organic presence. If some company and organization is trying to build their presence and their brand, have a voice, share their thought leadership, build a talent brand, all of that happens on LinkedIn pages on LinkedIn as well. So those are the two big parts of the portfolio. And the way, like, the way this all connects back to our vision is that LinkedIn's vision, by the way, is to create economic opportunity for every professional in the global workforce, which is a huge, huge ambition and really exciting one for all of us here. And when you create economic growth for any company, that company goes and hires people, which then creates economic opportunity in the world. So we believe that powering B2B commerce, powering the sale of products and services helps companies grow their revenue. And when revenue grows, they grow, and people get jobs. And so it's all connected to our vision, which is very exciting. I think that the way we think about strategy and about vision setting for LinkedIn Marketing Solutions, and frankly most businesses and most products at LinkedIn, is to really focus on what is the unique strength that LinkedIn brings to the table. Like what is it that we can do in this industry, in this space, that is uniquely LinkedIn? And it's partly because that makes it easier to build that product, but also if we don't do it, then who will? Like, there is this existential question of, if only LinkedIn has the strength and those assets, then it is our responsibility to bring it to market. So it's a really fun place to be, to explore those ideas. And LinkedIn has grown a lot. The scale is massive. Our members love the product, and it creates a lot of opportunity for us to go build even bigger and better products for the future. And at this point in time, I am really excited about the B2B space. Like, if you think about B2C buying and selling, you could order something in the morning on Amazon, and it would be at your doorstep by the afternoon. Imagine doing that when you're buying a software for a company, like or a printer for your organization. Like these things in B2B are really not at the place where they need to be. And LinkedIn has the opportunity to change that. So I am really excited about what the future of B2B commerce will look like, and how we can shape it using the strengths we have.
Absolutely. I love it, especially the aspect around what is our unique strength to play in this market. It's almost like when I asked you about your personal superpower, in this case, it would be like LinkedIn superpower to win in this place. So, just to ask a couple follow-up questions when it comes to crafting product strategy, I think a lot of times we wanted to be able to dream big, so that we inspire creativity and exploration of different ideas. But then at the same time, we need to give the team enough of focus such that we can really come up with like focus strategy and action. How do you find that balance between, defining an opportunity space that are broad enough, but also narrow enough to keep the team focused?
Yeah, great question. And Reed Hastings said this in some fireside chat that strategy is often not what you will do, but what you've chosen not to do. Because oftentimes, like all these opportunities, and each one of them, by the way, like if executed perfectly, will create massive impact. But if you choose that there is a do not do list, that's when you made the hard choice and come up with a strategy. And I always thought that that's a very very sage advice as you think about prioritization, which, by the way, for aspiring PMs, it's the hardest thing we do. Prioritization. There's always something that we will have to drop, and it's painful when we have to do it. So I think my perspective is, at least operationally, the way I like to plan is that the strategy and the vision is set on a longer term horizon. So the vision is for, it's resilient for 5-10 years. It's large enough that you have a lot of room to grow and keep expanding in many ways to get closer and closer to that vision. And then the strategy is your next 3 years, like you're coming up with a strategy that will give you the runway almost to play in that space for the next several years. And then comes the focus part, which is, okay, that's our vision, strategy, but what are we going to do as part of that for the next 12 months? And you could be doing 12 months or 6 months or 3 months, but the point about that set of priorities is where that focus comes in. The focus doesn't come from strategy or the vision. Those are intentionally big. They should be, otherwise people don't know what we're headed towards, or what is the big impact that any of the work that we do is going to have. But the priorities that are shaped only for a short period of time are what make the most difference in terms of how fast you can get to your strategy, or how effectively you'll get there, how many people you will bring along, how big of a team you need to hire. And those priorities can make a big difference, and they change, right? And so that's the part about, and that's the beauty about this model, because priorities can keep evolving as you see things changing around you. But if you build a sound strategy and you have a big enough ambition and vision, you don't have to go change those things very frequently.
Absolutely. I love that. So we have one question from our members. When it comes to dealing with highly ambiguous, asks, including defining strategy sometimes in certain circumstances, because you don't know whether you're placing the right bets, what were some of the framework or mental models that you adopt when it comes to dealing with ambiguous tasks?
Yeah. I think a lot of the product work starts with the same thing, but it's very central how LinkedIn operates now, which is to really understand what job needs to be done for your end audience, your target audience. And once you have a deep understanding of that job, of that need, I think it becomes easier to filter out the stuff that doesn't serve that need. And the jobs to be done framework and model is very well accepted across the industry. So I encourage you to read about that. But the thing that was eye-opening for me is that oftentimes PMs think about the job to be done using the functional lens, which is, these are the features that you have to check box to make the workflow work, or for them to get from A to B. What we don't realize is the social and emotional burden that the user has at any point in time. Like what else matters to them? So imagine like someone who is someone who works in a company is appointed as the person who's going to go buy, let's say, a new CRM for the team. Now, one part of the job is you have to understand what functionality is needed in the CRM, how many seats you need to buy, how much price negotiation you have to do. That's the functional part of your job. The emotional part of your job is you really don't want to make a mistake, because if you make a mistake, the team is going to hate you. Switching costs are so expensive for companies. And then the social part of the job is you want to look good. You want this to be a good thing for your career. So there's a lot happening in a user's mind. So oftentimes, like when you think about strategy and priorities, I think going back to with what was the user going through, and when we do these two things, does it really answer the question, or can we filter that out?
Absolutely. I think we have some related question in this space as well. One thing I like to think about is question from James: how much of the strategy affects, say, the PRD? And then I think what's more in the question is around the second half of the question, which is a lot of times we do a lot of market research, user research. How much of do you think we should like really lean into user research versus trusting our product guts or our understanding of the market, or how do we balance the jobs to be done behind maybe the surface level, what user tells you what they need to do?
Yeah, no, this is a wonderful question. And honestly, James, like this is probably the hardest thing about making those tough choices, when you have to prioritize what you're going to solve for and what you're going to ignore. I think the beautiful thing about technology is that you can learn pretty quickly, right? Like you can launch a version of it, and even in enterprise, consumer, you can learn within days. In enterprise, you can learn very quickly too, by sharing the product with the customer itself. But of course, the cost is high. So the way I think about this, and I want to go back to what we said earlier about perspectives, in a room where there are 10 people trying to make a decision, the product manager in most companies is held accountable for the final decision that was made, and the PM's job is to have that creative exchange very early, like have room for that creative exchange where you're diverging on opinions and then converging on something that makes the most sense. But the step where you diverge is a very important step, and I think it feels to people like, oh, we're lost, there's chaos, there's confusion, we don't know what to do. But I think that's where the real work is happening, because you've put everything on the table and you go into the next step very prepared, very aware of what you chose not to do. So I think like the good PM, or even great PMs who do this well, I think they always have that plan B in their mind. They know that they made a hard choice, but they have the plan B on if what happens if that choice was not right. And in technology, we'll find out pretty quickly. But I always like think back to some of my early products which failed, and I didn't. It was 9 out of 10 times it was because I did not listen to somebody in the room about what I should have done. So gut instinct is great, and you need it. By the way, you need to be opinionated about what you have to do. But having different perspectives in the room, sometimes having someone else say the same exact thing in their voice, in their framing, can make all the difference. So invite that discussion, invite that chaos. But when it's time to make that decision and stick with it and learn, and just be open to learning and changing it as you go.
I like how you say it, and by the chaos. And
Yeah.
then if it's the same thing coming from someone else, it's actually sometimes more powerful than it is coming from a PM, in many ways. So we have a related question to that. So let's say if your team disagree with what your strategies are or your prioritization, what are some of the strategies that you use when it comes to making trade-offs, as well as aligning people, to even maybe they disagree but commit to the outcome that you define?
Yeah. This is a great question actually, and I just wanted to maybe take a moment to say that if this is not happening often enough, you're not doing a job well, right? Because I think you need to make sure that you are pushing the product forward, and there will always be people who disagree with that direction. And if you're not making someone uncomfortable, if everyone is too comfortable with what's happening, that means you're still playing in the table stakes world. If you have gone into the next stage where someone is like, hey dude, I don't agree, I think this is odd, that's when you're in the real like fun part of this job, which is where you're inventing something new, where you're discovering or changing behaviors or designing. So if you're here, this is actually a good place to be. I think when there is a disagreement on trade-off decisions, what has usually helped is having, before this point arrives, when the disagreement happens, having some either principles or aligned metrics maybe weeks before this discussion happens is highly helpful, like just valuable, where you have had a discussion on, hey, this is what we're going to optimize, our priority is X, This is what we're going to optimize for. And these are the metrics that we will try to move. And sometimes it's not quantitative metrics, sometimes it's qualitative metrics, and that's okay. But when it comes to trade-off decision, being able to root it in something objective always helps. But then, Shri, as you said, it becomes emotional at times, and that is the art of product management and relationship building. I think building a trust with your team early on, that uh, you're in it together with them, and that you're gonna make a decision and learn quickly and have that feedback loop where nothing. The beautiful part about most decisions that we're making is that they can be undone. And if you have that honest discussion with your team, we get it. There are tough choices to make. I'm going to have to make one. And if we have to learn and improve, we will. So I think those feedback loops, having trust with the team, relationship building, and inviting them to do that creative exchange with you early, and align on principles, will avoid this situation. But even if you get here, know that it's for a good reason. That means you're in the next level play within product management.
I like the invitation of conversation early on, right? The debates, creating that psychological safety for people to express disagreement, and then focus on principles and align from there. I really like this approach. I know the chat has exploded with so many good questions. So thank you so much, folks. And I know 30 minutes is a short time. I do wanted to maybe switch focus to sort of coming back to individual career development, because we talk about setting strategies, how to think strategically for a product. We also have a set of questions actually from a number of LinkedIn members around strategies of setting vision and strategy and goals for individuals. For example, how do you think about growing from individual contributor to a group people manager to eventually excel into a leadership position? So Gyanda, do you have maybe you can apply some of the product strategy process into thinking about individual career growth?
Yeah, career development. Yeah, this is a great question. Actually, back on the product strategy, even I think one way to do that exercise is to, I think Scott Galloway shared this in his newsletter, that you look forward 3 to 5 years, and if you found that we have somehow 10x our member base, or 10x engagement, or 10x revenue, and then you ask yourself, what would we have done to get here? What changed to bring us to this 10x stage? And then work backwards to how you bring about that change. And I think you can have the same conversation about IC to position, that if you want to, it's not just about getting promoted into a manager role. It's being an effective leader. So if you see yourself as an effective leader, and this is very unique and personal to everybody, so I really never have some blanket advice on it, but whatever leader you want to be, you've seen leaders around you, I'm sure you have some mental model of this is the kind of leadership philosophy that you want to prescribe to. But when you have that end state in mind, ask yourself, what will need to change for me to become that? And sometimes the changes are more tactical, like you have to a manager, you already have some of the other skills. But sometimes they are emotional, like you have to go through some of the hard stuff, like you have to be able to hire really strong teams, make sure that they have a reason to work with you, they trust you. Sometimes you have to part ways with members of your own team, and those are tough things to do when you go from an IC to a leadership role. I remember when I made the switch, I was a very insecure manager. I had no idea where my job stopped and somebody else's began, and those things can take a long time. So if you have that, hey, this is the leader, this is the kind of leader I want to be, and work backwards to say, hey, what will it take to become that? And work through it step by step. It usually, product strategy, it usually works out.
Absolutely. Always start with the and in mind. I like that. I think we have a number of questions in a related sphere for aspiring PM or PM who are new to product management. You mentioned that every time you try something you fail, but what are some of the lessons that you would tell your earlier self to become a better PM that you wish you knew when you were just starting out?
This was actually advice I got early on in my career, and it's really helped me out, which is that you sometimes think in product management that it's about the product, that it's what you're going to launch, what's going to ship. But 99% of the job is not the what, it's the how. How are you going to do it? Are you going to do it with some principles in mind. Is the team going to trust you? Everything we just talked about. So I think this crew is already very clued into what actually matters. But the how matters so much more than the what, that at some point I remember making a very conscious decision to not consider anything boring. Like, when someone comes to you with, hey, like, there is a new platform, nobody else wants to do it. I was never the person who said, hey, that's not for me. I don't like that stuff. Because I think when you're starting out early, the priority should be less about the field, but more about the process. Like, how do you become a good PM? And so the faster you get to the craft of the how, the easier it becomes to switch into any field and any product. So I always tell people that when you're starting out, when your responsibility is just you, spend time on the craft, on the process. And then when your responsibilities grow, when you have a team, when you have a family, you have your parents, have a lot of things going on, then you start going into a field and you apply all the strengths of the process to that field. And then, of course, you go beyond product management at that point to something that encompasses various other roles. But just don't, at least for work for me, that I never thought anything was too boring to go and try and learn from.
Absolutely, that advice. So I think we'll conclude with this one final question from Karthik. What are some of the resources, whether it's books, blogs, podcasts, anything you would recommend for someone who's trying to build out their product expertise?
So there are several resources, but I will give you one tip which I found valuable. Mentorship. I hope everybody has a mentor, get one, but or many, not just one. But one thing that people do with mentorship is they try to find time with the person and sit down and learn from them in theory. What I found most valuable was if that mentor would let me into the way they work and let me see it. So I loved it when I could sit in a mentor staff meeting. I loved it if they would let me sit in their one-on-one meetings, if nothing confidential was being discussed. But just seeing them in action, seeing them at a big presentation, all hands, the reality of it is so much more powerful than the theory. At least I learn more by seeing and visualizing than I do by hearing or reading sometimes. So I highly recommend thinking about just some mentor who would let you in to see their work in action. And I think you can then start to decide, hey, that worked for me, that will not work for me. And then you do it across enough mentors and you start to build your own brand very quickly from there.
Right. I like that advice. Seeing mentors in action. I haven't tried that, so I'll take that as an advice for myself as well. Well, thank you so much, Gyanda, for spending time with us. And thank you so much for all the enthusiasm from the LinkedIn community in asking you questions. So we'll look to summarize some of the key takeaways from this session and share via our newsletter. So please subscribe to stay tuned. And next Friday, we have more guests coming to the show. So please stay tuned. And thank you so much, Gyanda.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, everyone. Bye.
Bye.